Okay. Can you see it, Doctor?
Can you make it slightly bigger?
Okay. Oh. Okay. Can you see it, Doctor?
Can.
Okay. So this is methodology. This is the introduction. I haven't actually wrote down the perfect intro yet, but the first one is the theoretical framework. I'm still doing the history of feminism, right? So, wait. Yeah, the movement, the first movement, the second movement, and the third movement, I put it in my theoretical, and this is the conceptual framework. The first key concept that I found was gender construction. It was actually, I found something else actually, but I can't remember what was it, and then I found the word gender construction. So I thought it would be okay, and it kind of made sense to the poetry that I found. It talks about how people are generalized yeah, generalized to act in a certain way or to dress in a certain way. But the thing is, for the gender construction, I just realized that I only talk about the problems, and I was wondering if I should put like how people are breaking the archetype and stuff. I was wondering about that, or should I put it in another key concept or any other way? Yeah. So the second key concept is female sexual objectification, which is kind of related to my poetry as well. Uh, yeah, and it just talk about women are being objectified for their body and the sport, sexual progress, ass and legs. Mm. And that's pretty much how what I found for now. I found a lot, but when I was writing it down and when I was rereading it again, I feel like it's more appropriate to put it in my literature review instead. So, what do you think, Doctor?
Such as when you
Um,
say it's more appropriate to put in the literature review, such as.
because I know that I did the fairy tales, so I found more about fairy tales than feminism. So I have to put it back in my literature review.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fairy tales, correct me.
Yes.
Fairy tales would be about the the genre of
Yeah.
your text.
Yes.
How will you analyze the poems?
Mm-hmm.
Is your methodology. So, can you give me an example of this is Rupi Kaur, right? You're
No,
looking
no,
at Rupi Kaur.
Nikita can. Wait, let me just get my Nikita's yearbook. So the first poem that I feel like I would be analyzing is it's called Wonderland Villain. Do you want me to share? I wrote the poem here somewhere. Let me just try to find it first. Let's see this one. Okay. I can find it, right?
Sorry, are you sharing something right now?
No, I'm trying to find where I put my slides.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
The reason I wanted you to show some of the analysis,
Mm-hmm.
if possible, was because so you can describe to me the methodology. How do you propose to analyze Nikita Gill's poetry? Uh, are you looking at okay, first of all, how many poems are you looking at? What aspects of the poem are you looking for? Um, when you say you are looking at the gender, can you show me your screen again?
Sure, sure. Present now. Okay. Can you see it, Doctor?
Okay, so the theoretical background,
Mm-hmm.
the theoretical background, that's fine.
Okay.
You talk about first generation, second generation, third generation, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then you come into the key concepts that you will use to analyze the poems. So one such key concept is this, this idea that gender is a construct.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about gender as a construct, how does it translate into narrative? How does the construction of gender, how does it translate into the poetry of Nikita Gill? So in order for you to be able to analyze gender construction in Nikita Gill's poems, you need to know what you will look for when you talk about gender construction. So when you talk about gender construction, are you looking for the way the female characters are represented by the poet? Are you looking for the way the male characters are represented by the poet? Is
So
there
I
any particular aspects that you are going to look for? For instance, the kind of roles that they play in each poem. Do the female characters play domesticated roles that are more domesticated, meaning it is within the realms of the home, the wife, the mother, the daughter, and are these gender constructions based on
the things that I found.
roles connected to relationships in the family, or um, are there any other qualities when it comes to gender construction? For instance, in terms of behavior, like you've got there, the behavior of the characters. For instance, are the female characters expected to behave in a feminine way? Are the masculine characters taught not to be too emotional? So these are part of the construction of gender, which means the child or the individual may be born into this world a female or a male, but it is society that constructs their identities, the way they dress, the way they think, the way they act, their behaviors. So under gender construction, what elements of gender construction will you look for in Nikita Gill's poems? You need to identify them in this chapter.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait,
Then
doctor.
under
I
gender
have
construction,
no,
go
no.
ahead, go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
I have the same question. You know the one that the last consultation that we had. I asked you a question. If what if for example, if sexual objectification for women's body only comes up for like 2 out of 5 poems. Is it okay? I can't remember what we said, and I just remembered that we didn't record the last session.
Sorry, what was the question again?
If, for example, if for the sexual objectification only comes out for 2 out of 5 poems, is it okay?
Okay,
Mm.
sexual objectification is another construct.
Yeah.
Okay, gender construction is one construct or one concept that you want to use to analyze the poems of Nikita Gill.
Yeah.
Another concept that you can use will be sexual objectification. You need to decide, first of all, what are the concepts that you want to use
Mm-hmm.
as a lens to study Nikita Gill's
Poetry.
poetry.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, first of all, decide on the concepts.
Okay.
Once you've got the concepts, you have to define what the concept means. You have to identify the key elements of these concepts. You have to also be able to say, if you are analyzing a work of poetry,
Mm-hmm.
how would these concepts be represented. So I would suggest either deciding which book of Nikita Gill's are you looking at again?
Fierce fairy tale.
Fierce fairy tales and other
Sorry, to stir your soul.
stories to stir your soul.
Yeah. That's around
So you've got poems and short stories.
yes.
Okay.
That's around 44 poetries altogether, I think.
But you are not looking at the stories. You are only looking at the poems. Is
Yeah.
it? Why?
And I chose five only. From the first session that we did, you suggested only take five poems.
Yeah. But why? Why only the what? Why have you chosen the poems and not stories?
Because one thing I don't really know how to analyze poems, so I thought it would be easier.
Poems will be easier compared to short stories.
Yeah, I think. Is it not?
How long are the short stories?
There's some short stories that there is around 2 to 3 pages. It really depends on the story. Yeah, most of it is like 2 to 3 pages.
Because my personal preference is prose. I don't like poetry as a research corpus,
I see.
because there's so much more to do with poetry. There's a lot more to do with prose. It's a story, so you see the narrative arc, you see the character development,
Mm-hmm.
you are able to identify the conflict. There is usually a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's a lot easier to kind of um, get involved in the text. With poems, there's a lot of things that are left unsaid, and you need to kind of almost you need to
Figure it
crack
out.
the code to be able to break you get into the puzzle, and like, what exactly is the poet trying to tell me,
Yes.
I'm downloading the book now, just a second. Does she spell out, or does she identify which are the poems and which are the short stories?
No.
Because they seem to be all poems. Which are the short stories?
Let me find one for you. Can you see Boy Lost on page 20?
Yeah.
Is it that the
Goldilocks is a poem, it's not a short story.
No, Boy Loss
Boy Loss.
is based on Captain Hook.
All right. So which poems did you want to pick on?
The first one is, let me see, Trap. Yes, on page 39.
Okay, Trap. What else?
Shahrazad the Clever.
Yes, that's good. Okay, what else?
Wonderland Villain.
You see, one way to select would be to go through the poems and then
Mm-hmm.
state, like make a list, make a
Okay.
checklist. So you've got how many texts are there altogether?
I think it's around 44 the last time I count.
How many?
44?
44. Okay. So you have like a table. All right.
Okay.
So 44. Then you have like a criteria, your
Oh, okay.
initial criteria that you use
Mm-hmm.
to decide whether or not this particular poem or short story can be considered. You
Mm-hmm.
see, and I'm looking at the title. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Um, titles like Once Upon a Time. No, okay. Remove, delete that. Some another criteria. Every poem that has elements of gender identity in the
Mm-hmm.
title, you will you will take it into consideration. For
Okay.
instance, A Tale of Two Sisters,
Mm-hmm.
The Miller's Daughter, Cinderella's Mother, The Stepmother, Fairy Godmother, Two Misunderstood Stepsisters, Shoemaker's Son. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all these titles,
Mm-hmm.
Hansel's letter to his son, The Dragon Witch's Daughter. So all these titles, there is a kind of gender identity signaled in the title. A title like Seven, it doesn't really tell you whether it has any gender issues in it.
Okay.
A title like Baby Yaga, a title like Why It Rains, a
Mm-hmm.
title like Why the Sun Rises and Sets, Why the Leaves Change Color, a title like The Moon Dragon, The Tail Weaver, Dif- uh, Vengeance Born, The Art of Emptiness, The Moral of Your Story, Charming, Metamorphosis. So these titles, they sound almost neutral in terms of gender identity.
True.
So I would say I would narrow it down to, first of all, narrow the selection to, out of the 44 titles, which are the ones in the title itself. In the title itself, it gives you an indication, an initial indication that there are some issues of gender in the identity. of this. It signals, yeah, it signals issues of gender. Motherly advice. Okay, I would start with that first. Then after that, what's the next construct in your discussion?
Sexual objectification.
No, under this that you haven't gotten anything yet.
Oh no.
Because I feel that gender construction is enough,
Okay.
because you want to be able to study Nikita Gill's works holistically. That's more impactful rather than having two or three concepts and only studying five poems.
Okay.
So I would go into gender construction in depth
Uh-huh.
if I were you. So you
Okay.
are looking at uh, um, representation of gender construction or gender identity
Mm-hmm.
in Nikita Gill's
Yes,
what's
very
the
good.
name? What's the name of this title again? Fierce Fairy Tales. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, like the gender construction. Are her gender constructed characters? Are they stereotypical? Do they try to break stereotypes? Do
Mm-hmm.
they subscribe to any particular cultural understanding of gender? Uh, yeah, you can go deeper into it. That means I'm in for chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
I would explore gender construction in greater depth
Okay.
if I were you. And then you will be able to make certain impactful statements about Nikita Gill's this one collection of poems and short stories. Because
Okay.
it's more impactful, it's more meaningful to you if you did it that way, rather than you just know two or three poems and you know it for two or three constructs. There's no point. Okay. So, yeah, let me look for. Okay. So if a simple search. So if I just put gender construction in my Google, before I even go into the theory of it, you already get some ideas that you can begin to read up on. The social construction of gender. What does gender construct mean? Gender is thus socially constructed, not a natural phenomenon, right? It's not a biological phenomenon where there is these biological traits of a female and of a male. For instance, a female will have menses upon reaching puberty. A female can conceive and can carry a child until mature, and the child will be born from the female. These things cannot appear in a male. So that's a biological feature of a female and a male, right? But in terms of construction, who is more who is more nurturing? Who is
Mm.
more loving towards that child? Who appears more abusive, who appears more aggressive. Those aspects are constructed,
Mm-hmm.
right? uh, uh, some societies will look at the masculine character as being domineering or aggressive, and the female character as being feminine and demure and soft spoken, right? So your exploration of gender construction also looks at gender identity. So there's two aspects. One is how the character identifies herself or himself. The second is how others view the character, right? So, for instance, in for instance, I'm just picking one. Okay, Cinderella's mother sends her a message from heaven. Okay, this is a text. This is a prose.
Mhm.
How does Cinderella's mother sound like? Does she sound gentle? Does she sound loving and accepting, or does she sound aggressive? Does she encourage Cinderella to go and get her dream, or does she come across as passive? Within the first and second generation of feminism,
Mm.
these are some of the things that the feminist critics have
Yes.
fought for or struggled for. They wanted equality between men and women. They wanted equality in terms of opportunities, in
Mhm.
terms of rights, right? But does the equality also mean that women and men are the same? Are we expected to be the same? Keeping in mind that your poet comes from another cultural background,
Yes.
right? So, how does Nikita Gill's cultural background, cultural identity, affects the way she paints this Western construct of Cinderella and the mother? Does it come from her more Eastern sensibilities of what a mother should be like? I like you see the first line of Cinderella's mother sends her a message from heaven. When you were just a little girl, I told you to have courage and to be kind. And this is how I will be with you throughout your life. You were so small and so sweet when I left you alone in this world. It hurt you so much that you took those words, gently wrapped them in one of my silk handkerchiefs, slept with them under your pillow every night. That image, of a motherless child and
Mhm.
how Cinderella's childhood was. That's how the mother paints the Cinderella's childhood. When your papa brought a new mama home for you, you tried. You really tried. You cooked and you cleaned, wore your little body into cinders and blood work for you and her daughters, who spoke about you like you were never there, even when you were fixing their corsets and mending their dresses and helping them dress. So, how is Cinderella described in that context? She has all the traits. She is soft spoken, she's
Mhm.
kind, she's loving, she's helpful. Even when others ill treat her, she doesn't seem to have the heart to be bad towards them,
Mhm.
right? So, does this fit within any particular ideologies of what it means to be a female? Now, in the feminist criticism, first generation, second generation, what kind of female characters were represented in those theories? Feminist criticism, huh? So, if you think about the traits of femininity, nurturing, sensitive, sweet. Sorry, can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, yes, I can see it.
Okay. sweet, supportive, gentle. So if Cinderella is described as having feminine qualities, what about the stepmother and the stepsisters? They are also female, right? Which means Cinderella has the feminine qualities, whereas the stepmother and stepsisters don't seem to have the feminine qualities. So does Nikita Gill's protagonist, Cinderella, does the protagonist break the expectations of the feminine qualities of a female, or does she appear to subscribe to it, follow the rules of what it means to be feminine? So just by looking at the gender construction and narrowing it down further to looking at traits, feminine traits or female traits, you can already have enough data. That means you go through the entire collection and you just identify poems and short stories that allows you to study the feminine traits, and how does the story or the poem represent the female character. Does the female character come across passive? Does she come across that means nurturing and sweet and all that, but if somebody abuses you, do you continue to be sweet and sensitive and supportive, or do you stand up and fight for yourself? Is there an element of agency? So one of the key concepts of feminism is, like I said, the first generation especially fought for equality in terms of job opportunities, in terms of rights to vote, in terms of to participate in society, to be part of the society. Yeah. And that conversation continues until today. Women are still, championing for those rights. So this idea that self-care, the woman taking care of herself, does that appear to be at conflict with feminine qualities of being a nurturer? If somebody is abusive towards you, do you appear to be kind and surrender to the expectations of that person, or do you stand up and fight back or resist, or what I mean? So when we talk about feminism and feminist qualities, one component is this idea of agency. Agency is the capacity for the individual to make choices, to take actions for the betterment of themselves, right? To protect themselves, for self-protection and self-preservation. So when the female is described as nurturing, sensitive, sweet, supportive, gentle, warm, and all that, there is an element of passivity. The individual, the female comes across as being passive, lacking in the capacity to make choices and take actions. So just looking at those elements, I can study the entire corpus of Nikita Gill's Fierce Fairy Tale collection and have enough data for an impactful reading. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So you don't need to have multiple, or you don't need to go into
a lot of concept.
a lot of concepts, but I would rather you have like maybe one concept, but you explore the elements of that concept, right? When you say gender construction, what are components of gender construction? Talk about the female traits and the feminine traits. Talk about the elements of agency in a female character. Talk about gender roles and identities. So all that is within gender construction. So sexual objectification is an element of gender construction, but I think for now, for this undergraduate thesis, we keep it simple. but study the entire collection. So you become more proficient, and your thesis has more impact.
Okay.
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 I want to see you again next week. I want an update because this is already week 5. So actually, by now, I would have wanted you to start on your analysis.
Yeah.
But since you're still developing your chapter 3,
Mhm.
uh, it's not so much about the number of pages, Wawa. It's not that. It's about understanding these concepts and being able to use them, uh, as a lens, as a research, as a reading tool for the text that you have chosen.
Okay. I think it's a lot easier now because I'm focusing on one key concept.
For sure.
Yes. Gender construction.
Okay, any questions?
Um, should we meet face to face?
Next Thursday is a public holiday. I'm supposed to go into work on Wednesday, but I have full day meeting, morning
Okay.
faculty meeting, and afternoon I've got a management meeting. So even if I come, even if you came to the office, excuse me, her. She's like, enough with your student. Come and spend time with me. Um, I think maybe not next week. If you want to meet face to face, maybe the week after, the week before Raya.
Okay.
Yeah, but next week I would like to know your reading about gender construction. Okay, what have you understood? About gender construction. What? Okay, okay. Can let me finish first? Okay, she needs to kiss. Okay, all right, fine. Okay, she just woke up. Okay, so I would say keep reading up about gender construction. So next week, I want to hear your presentation about gender construction.
Okay.
Okay, keep asking yourself this question:
Hmm.
as a girl, as a lady, as a female, how does my gender affects my identity? Am I structured in the way I behave based on my gender? Or am I free to behave and do whatever I want, irrespective of my gender? Is there something in your life, in your daily life, and your responsibilities, and the way you carry yourself in the world that is structured by your gender? Meaning the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way you are treated by society. So by asking those questions for yourself, then you go to the theory and you ask, like I said just now, then can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Then you can ask these kinds of you can look at which component is relevant, like under feminism, the kind of issues being discussed or problematized include domestic violence and all this, but these are not things that are relevant to your text. So I would not bring that up. I would actually skip that. uh, the idea that one of the things that feminism values is respect and care and nurture for the female, because for the longest time the female has been neglected, excuse me, has been neglected, right? So um, yeah, so I need you to read up more extensively in the idea of gender construction, if that's what you're interested in. My personal take is feminism might not be significant. This is just my personal take. I personally feel gender identities might be better. Okay, so when you look at discussions of gender identities, you know, you're looking at how the character is described, the choice of words being used, how the character is treated by others, how the character associates herself with her sense of identity. Does the character in the text that you have identified, do the characters appear to see gender as an important component of her identity? So, just looking at that, but we will come up with a kind of a rubric. What are the things that you will look for in these characters? And then you will collect the data based on that. So, two things to do. Number one, go through the 44 text, poems, and short stories in this anthology. Based on the 44, decide which are the ones you will analyze, which are the ones you will include in the corpus. And the selections must be objective. Maybe you can say any text that has the female character as a central character, you will include it in the discussion. So that will be the task. So at the end of the day, out of the 44, then you can decide how many have I included. Maybe you will say 20. Okay, and then that's the corpus, because the corpus comes in chapter 1 or chapter 3. It depends on you. The second element is, under the theory of gender identity, gender construction, under the discourse of gender, explore how do you study gender in literature. Just Google that. How do you study gender in literature or in narrative? Okay, look at other people's methodology. How gender in works of fiction? What do they do in terms of gender identity? Okay, maybe they look for the binary between the female character and the male character to show whether the writer is biased towards the female character more than the male, right? Or is the writer appear to be biased towards the male characters? That means the male characters come across more heroic, right? The female character comes across more passive, right? Subjecting themselves to the verbal, the emotional abuse of society, of the family. So your task for next week will be those two. Do you have any questions?
Are you suggesting that I change my theoretical framework?
I'm suggesting that you narrow it down, because right now you don't have anything concrete just yet.
Yeah.
So you are not, unless you are proposing something significant. So I would say it's not that I'm asking you to change it so much as I'm asking you to narrow the scope, Say, for instance, this question: what is female agency in literature? So looking at female agency, one of the meanings, if you like, is that the female plays an active role in the story, not a minor character, not a secondary character, but an active character. So within feminism, you are only looking at the concept of agency. Okay? So agency is the ability to identify goals and make choices. So out of your 44 texts, Maybe you narrow it down to uh, text that has female characters in the story. And out of those that you have narrowed down, maybe you narrow it down to say 20 or 25 or something like that. So out of these 25, which are the ones shows the female character as having a sense of agency, i.e., by this definition, right? Being able to assert their own goals and choices. Does Cinderella appear to have agency? Or does she come across as passive? You know? So if you go through all that and then look at the stepmother and stepsisters, they appear to have more agency because they seem to be able to dictate the course of their life. So the heroines appear to be passive. The villain characters, even if they are female, they appear to be more active. They appear to have agency, right? So what does that mean? Like, then the impact of your study. What's the implication of this reading? Then you can discuss that issue further. You understand?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
Nothing for now. Maybe I need to do some research. If I have a question, I will WhatsApp you.
I would suggest reading such articles like this to look at their methodology from damsel in distress to active agent, female agency in children's and young adult fiction. So have a look at this article. I'll send you this. Oh, this is a thesis. This is a doctoral thesis. So you may look at this thesis and just look at the methodology chapter. Uh, have a read at the introductory chapter, chapter 1, and look at how this particular scholar, researcher, has decided to analyze female characters. Look at the methodology. Femme fatale. Femme fatale is when a female character demonstrates a kind of sexual identity, and through that sexual energy and identity, the female character is able to achieve more that she is than others. So she's using her female sexuality maybe to take revenge, maybe to inflict attention or pain or destruction on certain individuals. So the femme fatale is a trope, and femme fatale comes across as both sexual but dangerous, destructive, right? Uh, um, Elsa in Frozen appears in the beginning like a femme fatale because she has this destructive qualities. She has the power to destroy and hurt people, right? In literature, a female with these kinds of quality tends to come across as femme fatale. They are not demonstrated as the heroic characters of their story. They come across as destructive. It's almost like saying when a woman has power, the woman tends to be destructive. Whereas when a man has a power, the man appears to conquer lands and appears more courageous. And whereas if it's a female, she doesn't come across courageous. She comes across destructive. So the femme fatale is a kind of a negative trope for the woman, even though she has agency, right? Even though she has agency, her agency is destructive. Okay? Any questions?
Nothing for now. But I do have questions for like you know work related.
Go on then.
Since you're a literature lecturer, what did you do after degree? Like what path did you choose?
What do you mean? Do you mean as a job?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good question. Um, look at the kind of skills that you are developing now. Okay. You are developing critical thinking. You are developing the ability to read and synthesize what you have read. And you are developing writing skills. It's not easy to develop these skills if you did not have the opportunity to conduct research. So all these skills, you can utilize these skills in so many areas. You can go into human resource, you can go into communication departments, you can go into media, like say for instance you work in the media industry, you will be required to read a lot of literatures, a lot of documents. You will be required to synthesize what you have read. You may even be asked to write things down into your own words, paraphrase what you have read. You may also be required to develop your own ideas based on what you have read. So, all the skill set that you are developing through this research alone allows you to go into so many different areas. So it depends on your interest. If you are interested to work with people, if you're interested to manage people, so you will definitely go into the human resource type of field, right? Corporate communication, that kind of field, right? So your ability to communicate, your ability to develop your own ideas based on what you have seen, synthesize, infer from what you have read, right? This is the skill you're developing now. You're reading Nikita Gill's works and you're asking yourself, what exactly is she saying? What exactly is she conveying? About what? About gender identity, about female roles. This is a skill you are developing, right? You will have an opportunity to demonstrate this, for instance, in like news agency like BFM or radio agencies if you're more into radios, or then the media industry, into journalism. Uh, um, uh, yeah, it all depends on your interest. It depends on your interest. If you are interested in the writing component, then copy editing, copywriting, copy editing, that's the track. Publishing houses, you know because of the skill sets that you are developing. So I'm more interested about the skills that you have developed, not so much about the courses that you have done. Have you done literature, have you done linguistic, have you done ELS courses? Not like that. It's more about the skills that you have developed now, and that's why this particular research actually allows you to develop those skills, because you are developing your own ideas, your own topic for research.
Okay.
So right now you are basically looking for places to send for your
Internship.
latihan industry. Yeah. What are you interested in? So I will stop recording now because this is not relevant to your research.